The blood ran down the deserted road, mixing with the smell of iron and dust. A man, once feared like a legend, now reduced to a staggering body, fought against death. His breath was a harsh whisper, a silent plea not to be swallowed by the darkness. But did someone like him deserve to be saved? They say the monsters of the night know no compassion. But what if, behind the cruel mask, there was only a betrayed heart, still beating for honor? Who would dare look into the eyes of a half-dead mafioso and see more than the blood on his hands? That was when she appeared, fragile at first glance, but with the courage of someone who carries storms inside her chest. Fate placed her before him, and the question echoed in the silence. Would she save a dangerous stranger, or let life abandon him there, as so many wished? Between death and survival, between revenge and love, a story is born, made of fever and secrets, of sheets soaked in sweat and gazes that burn hotter than fire. A story in which every touch is forbidden, every sigh is surrender, and every choice can cost a life. And when the truth is revealed, who will be on their knees? The man marked by honor, or the heart that dared to love him? Night fell like a veil of ink over the forgotten road. The asphalt, cracked by time, reflected only fragments of moonlight, like broken pieces of an abandoned mirror. The wind blew dry, carrying dust, the smell of scorched grass, and the metallic taste of blood. The black car, once a symbol of power and intimidation, lay abandoned on the roadside, its doors open like exposed wounds. The sound still echoed in his mind. Gunshots, screams, the short breath of someone running for his life. He, Wu-jae, heir to the most feared family in the suburbs, staggered. Every step was a challenge against death. His torn suit clung to his body with sweat, and the red that would not stop flowing. His eyes, once cold and calculating, were now blurred by pain, by the betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. Loyalty. How far does a man's word go? He thought between groans, clutching his abdomen as if he could hold in the life that was slipping away. He wasn't afraid to die. He had seen death up close hundreds of times, but to die like this, at the hands of those he trusted, that was unbearable. The silence of the road was broken only by the dragging of his worn shoes and the uneven sound of his breathing. Each time air entered his lungs, his chest burned. Each time the blood spilled, his vision blurred further. Deep in his mind, flashes of the past haunted him, banquets lit by golden chandeliers, his father teaching him that a man without honor is worth nothing, and the false laughter of those who swore loyalty. Now, those memories were nothing but broken mirrors, reminders of a world that felt distant. He fell to his knees in the dust. His hands touched the cold ground, and the taste of iron returned to his mouth as he spat blood. The moon above seemed to mock him, illuminating the solitude of the fallen air. Is this how it ends? A king without a throne? A wolf without a pack? His mind echoed. Forcing himself up, he stumbled on, every muscle in his body begging him to stop. The blood left a red trail along the road, a silent line that screamed his vulnerability. Then, in the distance, the shadow of a village appeared. Small houses of old wood, surrounded by rice fields swaying in the night breeze. The place looked untouched by time, oblivious to power struggles and the city's scars. Wu-jae let out a laugh, bitter, turning into a cough. What irony. Perhaps here, in this forgotten place, my body will finally find eternal rest. His knees buckled again. The hard ground received him like a sentence. His breathing grew weak, uneven. Cold began to take hold of his fingers. And then, footsteps. Soft, almost inaudible. A sound that didn't match the brutality of the night. Through the forming mist, a figure emerged. Small, fragile at first glance, but with the steadiness of one who does not fear shadows. It was Myra, the village girl, carrying a basket of freshly picked herbs in her hands. The fresh scent of lemongrass and mint followed her, contrasting with the metallic smell of blood that dominated the air. She stopped, her heart racing at the sight of the body sprawled on the road. The basket fell, scattering leaves across the ground. Her eyes fixed on him, on the torn clothes, the blood, the expression of pain and resistance. Anyone sensible would have fled. After all, he wasn't an ordinary man. Even fallen, something in his posture conveyed power, danger, weight. But instead of running, Myra stepped forward. "Sir?" Her voice came out soft, almost a whisper, fearing he might be just a vision. Wu-jae lifted his eyes. For an instant he saw only a blurred patch of light, but then he distinguished her face. Fair skin, large eyes, an expression of genuine concern. Her purity hit him like a punch. He tried to speak, but only a groan escaped. Myra knelt beside him, ignoring the blood staining her clothes. She pressed her palm to his chest, feeling the faint, almost non-existent breath. Feverish heat burned her skin. "You'll die if you stay here," she murmured, more to herself than to him. She looked around. A deserted road. No one would come. If she left him there, he would die before dawn. But if she took him home, she risked bringing ruin upon her simple life. For a moment, she closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Then, without further hesitation, she tore the thick sheet she carried in her basket and improvised a kind of stretcher. With effort, she passed his arms over her shoulders and began to drag him. The body was heavy. Every movement felt impossible. Blood dripped, staining the earth. Her heart pounded so hard it seemed to echo through the night. "Hold on. Please, hold on," she repeated, as if her words could keep him alive. Half conscious, Wu-jae felt the warmth of that touch. For the first time, someone wasn't abandoning him. There was something in the way she moved, determined, brave, that stirred a place inside him he believed was dead. Her house appeared ahead, a simple wooden structure lit only by the soft flame of a lamp. The smell of damp earth mingled with that of the flowers growing around it. To Wu-jae, it felt like an oasis in the desert of darkness. Panting, Myra managed to drag him inside. She laid him on an improvised mat, ran to the cabinet, and brought clean cloths, boiled water, roots and herbs she used as medicine. The silence was broken only by his groans and heavy breathing. With trembling but steady hands, Myra wiped the blood away, as if his life depended on every detail. Don't let me lose you here," she whispered, not even realizing the weight of her own words. Outside, the night remained still, as if the universe were waiting to see the fate of that unlikely meeting. The mafioso marked by betrayed honor, and the young woman who dared to face the impossible to save a stranger. But the question remained in the air, suffocating, inevitable. She knew sheltering that man could destroy her life, so why couldn't she let him die? His life now depended entirely on her. But who, after all, was this man whom fate had thrown at her feet? Myra's house was small, made of light wood and old dark tiles. The night wind slipped through the cracks, bringing the smell of wet earth and the distant chirping of crickets. Inside, only a lamp lit the room, casting shadows that danced on the walls. Wu-jae lay on the improvised mat, his chest heaving with difficulty. Feverish heat burned his skin. Sweat ran down his forehead and mixed with the blood still staining the floor. On her knees beside him, Myra breathed fast, trying to master her fear. She had never seen so much pain up close. Her hands shook, but they did not stop. She wet a cloth in boiled water and gently passed it over the wound, cleaning away the excess blood. The metallic smell filled the room, mingled with the fresh aroma of the herbs she had thrown into the clay pot to make tea. Stay with me. You won't die. Not now." Her voice was low, almost a secret, as if she were afraid death might hear her. Even unconscious, Wu-jae stirred, a hoarse groan escaping his lips. Myra paused for an instant, heart racing, before pressing the cloth back to the wound. She felt his body shudder beneath her touch, as if the mere contact were both pain and relief. The hours crawled by. Outside, the moon traveled across the sky, and dawn arrived with its deep silence. Myra remained awake, changing cloths, wiping sweat, forcing his body to drink small sips of the bitter tea. Each time he swallowed, even with difficulty, she sighed in relief. But the fever would not break. He trembled, his face contorted with pain, his breath irregular. With every groan, Myra pressed her lips together, as if she could share his agony. In the middle of the night, while she washed another blood-soaked cloth, she stopped before the basin of dark water and took a deep breath. Her reflection trembled along with the tears that insisted on forming. "What am I doing?" she thought. "I brought into my home a man who might be dangerous, maybe even a criminal. If anyone finds out, I'll be ruined." But when she looked back at him, lying there, vulnerable, something inside her broke. She didn't see a monster. She saw a man alone, wounded, fighting death, and she felt that, in some inexplicable way, she could not abandon him. The night advanced. In feverish delirium, Wu-jae began to mutter disjointed words. Myra leaned closer, tilting her head to listen. "Father, honor, betrayal," he said between groans, eyes closed, breath heavy. She frowned. Honor? Betrayal? Who was this man after all? Shh, she whispered, running her hand through his hair, brushing the damp strands from his forehead. You're safe now. No one will hurt you here. For a moment, his muscles relaxed, as if her voice had power over the pain. Myra felt her heart tighten. There was something strange about that connection, as if he trusted her even in unconsciousness. At sunrise, the first light filtered through the window, bringing the fresh scent of the fields and the song of birds. Myra was still at his side, eyes tired, but she never left her vigil. Her body cried out for rest, but her will to keep him alive was stronger. She stood slowly, opened the door, and let the morning breeze in. The village still slept, and for a moment she felt that this secret could be kept. No one needed to know about the mysterious man breathing in her house. Back in the room, she knelt at his side again. Wu-jae's chest rose and fell irregularly, but there was life yet. Myra ran her fingers over his hand, firm, marked by scars that spoke of old battles. "Who are you?" she asked in a low voice, as if not expecting an answer. Wu-jae opened his eyes for a brief instant. Dark, intense, fever-blurred but focused, they met hers with a weight that made her hold her breath. It was quick. He closed them again, sinking into another nightmare. But for Myra, that look was etched in her mind. It wasn't the look of an ordinary man. It was the look of someone accustomed to obedience, to command. A look that concealed pain, pride, and something else she couldn't decipher. The next hours were a silent dance of care, cleaning, changing cloths, preparing herbal remedies. Each time she drew close, she felt the heat of his skin against hers, and her heart stumbled. Time seemed suspended. The village went on with its simple routine, but inside that house a silent battle raged, between the death-circling Wu-jae and the life Myra desperately tried to preserve. At night, when the fever returned stronger, Wu-jae grew agitated. His body shook. His groans grew louder. Frightened, Myra held his shoulders, trying to calm him. "Hey, you have to fight," she said firmly, eyes brimming. "Don't make me believe all this is in vain." He opened his eyes suddenly, panting. His vision was still blurred, but he found her face again. For a few seconds, there was no fever, no pain, no shadow. Only the silence between two gazes that seemed to recognize each other for no reason. Myra felt her heart race. Her hand still rested on his chest, and Wu-jae, though weak, seemed to cling to that contact like the only anchor holding him to this world. In that moment, an invisible bond formed. It wasn't just gratitude. It wasn't just survival instinct. It was something deeper, something neither of them could explain. Outside, the wind blew harder, rattling the windows, as if even the night bore witness to that unlikely meeting. Myra closed her eyes, drew a deep breath, and realized her life had already changed. The question was no longer whether she should save him. The question now was, who is the man I brought into my house, and why does my heart insist on believing in him? Myra felt that life would never be the same after that night, but would she be ready to discover who the man fighting to survive in her home truly was? Morning was born slowly, washing the village in golden tones. Sunlight slipped through the cracks of the wooden window, marking the floor of the small room with warm lines that contrasted with the dimness. The air smelled of freshly harvested rice and wildflowers, but inside the house, the prevailing scents were of healing herbs mingled with the sweet iron of blood still clinging to the mat. Myra was exhausted. Her eyes were heavy after sleepless nights, but she stayed by his side, as if her own breathing followed his. She ran a damp cloth over Wu-jae's forehead, murmuring words he might not even hear. Suddenly, his lashes fluttered, so subtle she almost thought she imagined it. Then his eyes opened slowly, black, deep, loaded with an intensity that made her catch her breath. For an instant, time stopped. He stared at her, confused, feverish, but alert. There was no weakness in that gaze. There was a contained strength, something rising even in pain. A shiver ran down Myra's spine. "You woke up," she whispered, as if afraid to scare the moment away. Wu-jae blinked slowly, trying to understand where he was. His eyes traced the wooden ceiling, the still-lit lamp, the simple walls. They returned to her, a delicate face, skin bathed in the soft morning light, eyes glassy with fatigue yet steady. "Who are you?" he murmured with difficulty, his voice deep, hoarse, as if the words tore through his throat. Myra hesitated, swallowing hard. She didn't know how to answer. "Just someone who Couldn't let you die, she said simply, almost shyly, but with truth. He watched her in silence. His look was heavy, probing, as if testing whether he could trust her. He was used to sizing people up at a glance, decoding hidden intentions. But here, he found no malice, only compassion. Something strange stirred in his chest. He, who always believed survival depended on his own strength, now breathed because this woman had chosen not to turn her back. Silence stretched between them, thick with a tension neither knew how to name. Every breath felt louder than it should. Every movement took on weight. Myra looked away first, turning to the basin. She moistened the cloth and resumed tending the wound, but her hands shook slightly. She felt his eyes on her, burning, following each gesture. When the cloth touched his skin, Wu-jae clenched his jaw. The touch was gentle, yet his body reacted as if it were too intimate. "You don't need to," he began, trying to push her hand away, but his arm had no strength. "Yes, you do," she cut in, firm, surprising even herself. "If you don't take care of this, you won't last long." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. There was steel in that sweet voice, a delicacy hiding courage. Myra drew a deep breath, trying to hide the blush rising to her face, the warmth of his skin under her fingers, the closeness, the silence thick with tension. It all threw her off balance. But she couldn't show it, not before a man who radiated power even in weakness. Wu-jae closed his eyes for a moment, feeling her breath so close, her light floral scent mingling with the herbs. It was strange. He was used to the smell of gunpowder, cigarettes, strong whiskey, but here, everything was pure, fresh, almost innocent. "Why, didn't you leave me there?" he asked suddenly, voice low but weighted enough to nearly stop her hands. Myra lifted her eyes to his. The silence stretched before she answered. "Because I couldn't live knowing I let someone die alone." The words hit him harder than he expected. His chest ached, not from the wound, but from their echo. No one had ever spoken to him like that. He had always been seen as heir, boss, enemy, or ally. Never simply someone who deserved to live. His eyes softened for an instant, and Myra noticed. It was the first time she saw something beyond hardness, something human, and it disarmed her. She kept tending him in silence, but each time their hands met, a shiver ran through her. The heat growing between them wasn't only fever, it was something else, a timid but intense fire, kindling in the most forbidden of places. Still weak, Wu-jae let his mind drift. He thought of those who had betrayed him, of the gunshots, the blood. But now, looking at this woman, he felt something had changed. For the first time, perhaps, he didn't only want to survive. He wanted to understand who she was. The lamp flickered, casting soft shadows over them. With every movement, it felt like the room closed in, leaving them alone in a suspended world. He watched her. She tried to avoid the weight of his gaze, and failed. Myra's heart beat too fast, and with every touch she felt as if she were crossing an invisible line. And then the silence was broken only by a shared thought, though unspoken. "Why does it feel like we've met before? Why do your eyes seem to recognize me?" The tension was palpable. Their bodies didn't touch beyond what was necessary, but the air between them seemed to vibrate, as if desire were already written by destiny. Deep down, both knew, nothing would be the same after that first look. If eyes already revealed so much, what would happen when hands, lips, and secrets began to speak? The following days drifted by like a breath suspended between life and death, between care and desire. Myra's house, once simple and quiet, now seemed to breathe with the stranger who occupied her room. Every movement she made, every sound, every ordinary gesture became part of an invisible choreography, heavy with tension. Wu-jae was conscious now, but still weak. The wounds were slow to close, and his heavy body kept him tied to the mat. Myra had become his shadow, bringing water, brewing teas, changing blood-stained cloths. He watched in silence, his eyes always fixed on her, as if trying to decipher the woman who had decided to carry him into her home. One afternoon, as the sun washed the walls in gold, Myra approached with a bowl of hot broth. The aroma of simmered vegetables spread through the air, soft, comforting. She sat beside him, blowing gently on the spoon before bringing it to his lips. "You don't need to," Wu-jae murmured, trying to lift his hand, but his arm still trembled. "Yes, you do," she answered, firm again, repeating the tone that had already surprised him. "If you don't eat, You'll grow even weaker. Silence between them was broken only by the sound of the warm liquid being sipped. With each spoonful, their eyes met for brief seconds. Time seemed slower, heavier, as if that simple act carried something forbidden. When he coughed lightly, and she leaned in to wipe his mouth with the cloth, their faces were inches apart. The heat of Wu-jae's breath brushed her skin, and a shiver ran through her spine. Myra pulled back quickly, eyes flushing. He watched her with a slight lift of his brow, as if noticing her reaction. He said nothing, but deep inside, the corner of his mouth nearly curved into a discreet smile. That night, the fever returned, though less intense. Myra helped him sit up a little, supporting him against her body to change the sheets damp with sweat. His strength hadn't fully returned, and almost all his weight fell on her. For a moment, Wu-jae's body pressed against hers, the heat of his skin burning through the thin fabric of her dress. "Sorry," he murmured, voice deep, laden with a timbre that made her tremble. It's fine," she replied quickly, but her voice shook too much to be convincing. When she settled him back onto the mat, she realized how much her own hands were trembling. It wasn't only care, it was something slipping out of her control, a flame beginning to kindle with every touch. The next days became a collection of small accidents, her fingers brushing his when she changed a cloth, his gaze lingering on the movement of her mouth when she spoke. The heavy quiet that fell whenever the lamp lit only the two of them, surrounded by darkness. One dawn, Wu-jae woke with a start, breath ragged, a nightmare. Myra, who had been dozing against the wall nearby, ran to him. "Shh, it's all right. It was just a dream," she said, taking his hand. Wu-jae's eyes were still hazy, but they fixed on hers. He squeezed her hand lightly, seeking an anchor. The simple gesture burned in her chest like fire. Myra sat beside him and stayed until his breathing calmed. Their fingers remained intertwined, as if neither had the courage to let go. The silence of that early morning felt more intimate than any words. The next morning, the air felt different. The sun shone brighter, but inside the house the air was charged. Myra set the table, acutely aware of his eyes on her. Every gesture, folding a cloth, stirring a pot, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, seemed to take on new meaning. When she turned, she found his gaze fixed, intense, burning hotter than any fever he'd carried. "You saved me," he said suddenly, voice firm, without hesitation. Myra swallowed, surprised. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," he cut in, his gaze piercing. "Anyone else would have left me on the road. You didn't." Her heart raced. She wanted to reply, but her mouth found no words. She only looked away, busying herself with cloths, trying to disguise the confusion growing inside her. But Wu-jae continued to watch her. It wasn't ordinary gratitude. It was something more, a recognition, a silent connection they didn't yet dare to name. That night, when Myra put out the lamp and lay down on the mat across the room, her breath was unsteady. She knew it wasn't only fear of what she had done by sheltering him. It was fear of what she was feeling. Across from her, Wu-jae lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling. His body still ached, but pain wasn't what kept him from sleep. It was the warmth of the memory of her body against his, the soft scent that still clung to him, the unexpected firmness in her words. He closed his eyes, and in silence, admitted to himself, there was something about this woman that disarmed him more than any bullet. And fate, cruel and inevitable, was already weaving the threads that would bind them under the same flame. How long could they resist the fire burning in the silence of those nights? The night was silent, but inside the wooden house the air felt heavy, as if every shadow carried unspoken secrets. The lamp lit Wu-jae's face, still pale, but more alert. His wounds had begun to heal, and with them came something he had hidden until then, the need to speak, to be seen not only as the wounded body she nursed, but as the man who existed before the betrayal. Myra was finishing the herbal tea when she heard his voice, hoarse but steady. "You haven't asked who I am." She paused for a moment, spoon hovering in the air. It wasn't true. She had asked herself many times, but never aloud, maybe because she feared the answer. "I didn't think it was my place," she said finally, setting the cup on the small table beside the mat. Wu-jae's dark, intense eyes followed her. There was a weight in them that seemed to pierce the silence. For someone who carried a blood-soaked stranger into her home, everything ought to be your place. Myra looked away, nervous. "If I asked, would you answer?" He didn't reply at once. He closed his eyes and drew a deep breath. When he looked at her again, there was a shadow of pain there, but also a truth ready to be exposed. I was born into a family where the word honor was worth more than money. My father used to say that without loyalty, a man is nothing. I grew up believing that. His voice was low, almost intimate, as if he were speaking only to himself. Myra sat on the floor near the mat, listening in silence. The family I inherited, they call it the mafia. To many, we're monsters. To others, protectors. To me, it was simply a legacy. I didn't ask to be born into it, but I learned there were rules, that men keep their word, that loyalty is non-negotiable. He paused, eyes fixed on the wooden ceiling. And then, they came. Those who smiled to my face, who toasted with me, who swore fidelity. They betrayed me, shot me in the back. His voice thickened, bitter. They didn't just want my place. They wanted to destroy what my father built. They wanted to turn loyalty into currency. Myra pressed her fingers into the cloth on her lap, feeling the pain hidden in his words. It wasn't just wounded pride. It was a heart that had believed in something greater, only to be crushed by betrayal. I'm no saint, he continued, his gaze shifting to her. I've done things you couldn't bear to hear. Blood has stained my hands, and I never tried to wash it off. But every time I pulled the trigger, it was for honor, never for pleasure, never on a whim. Myra's eyes met his. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. Do you think someone like me can be forgiven? He asked, with a frankness that surprised her. She remained silent, the question echoing inside her. She had no answer. She didn't know his world, nor could she judge it, but she knew what she saw before her. A man wounded not only in body, but in soul. I don't know if I can speak of forgiveness, she said slowly, choosing each word. But I know you are not only what you've done. You're still breathing. You still feel. And if you're alive, maybe it's because you still have something to fulfill. Wu-jae watched her for a long time. The silence was dense, but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of shared secrets. She continued changing the bandage, hands delicate yet firm. She felt his breath quicken slightly with every touch, and somehow, it wasn't only from pain. Myra, he called, voice low, almost a whisper. She raised her eyes, surprised to hear her name on his lips for the first time. Do you believe in destiny? The question caught her off guard. She was quiet for a few seconds before answering. I believe that some people cross our path for a reason, even if we don't understand it at the time. His eyes fixed on hers, intense, as if searching for a truth he wasn't sure he wanted to find. Myra's heart beat too fast. The air felt warmer, heavier. With every passing second, the space between them grew smaller, even though neither moved. Wu-jae closed his eyes for an instant, letting out a sigh that mixed pain and weariness. I should keep my distance from you, he said, almost to himself. But I can't. Color rushed to Myra's face. Her chest tightened, and she looked away, pretending to arrange the cloths. She didn't know what to say. Perhaps there was no answer. Silence returned, but this time it carried something new. A bond. An unspoken confession. Outside, the night remained calm, but inside the small house an entire universe seemed ready to collapse. And for the first time, Myra asked herself, could I love a man whose shadow still smells of gunpowder and blood? Myra now knew part of the truth, but could she bear what was yet to come? The desire, the vengeance, the passion set ablaze. Night fell heavy, laden with dark clouds. Wind slipped through the gaps in the wooden house, making the lamp's flame waver. Myra adjusted the cloths, trying to ignore the dense silence between her and Wu-jae, but ignoring was impossible. With every breath, every lingering glance, the air felt saturated with something too big to fit inside them anymore. Wu-jae was sitting up for the first time, leaning against the wall, disheveled hair falling across his brow. His body still bore fresh scars, but his eyes were more alive than ever. He followed her with his gaze, and Myra, even unwillingly, felt bare beneath that intensity. When she approached to check the dressing, her fingers brushed his skin. The contact was brief, but enough to break the silence. Wu-jae's eyes lifted, finding hers inches away. Myra, his voice shaped her name like a deep breath, charged with something that stole her air. She tried to turn away, but he caught her hand. There was no brute force in the gesture, only firmness. I can't, he murmured, voice low but filled with truth. I can't pretend I don't feel this anymore. Myra's heart thundered. Her eyes trembled as she reached for strength. You're confusing it. It's only gratitude. No, he cut in, firm, leaning closer. Gratitude doesn't burn like this. Silence fell, heavy, but alive, filled with quick breaths. The lamp's flame flickered, lighting their close faces, lips almost touching. Myra felt the heat of his skin invade hers, his scent, sweat, herbs, and something intensely male surrounding her. When Wu Jie tilted his face, she closed her eyes. The first brush of lips was hesitant, but loaded with pent-up urgency. A kiss that started soft, then deepened, hungry. Myra felt her body weaken, as if every part of her had been waiting for this without knowing. His hands rose to her nape, drawing her closer, as if he couldn't let her escape. The whole world vanished. No more pain, no wounds, no past. Only the unbearable heat of that kiss. She pulled back for a moment, breathless, cheeks flushed. This is wrong, she murmured, though her eyes shone in contradiction. Wu Jie pressed his forehead to hers, drawing a steady breath. Nothing that makes me feel alive can be wrong. His words ignited something inside her. Myra knew she should step back, yet she let herself go. She kissed him again, this time with the intensity she had been hiding for days. The little house seemed to tremble with each sigh, every touch growing bolder. Her once timid hands now explored his chest, feeling firm muscle and the scars that told their stories of battle. He held her gently, as if afraid to break her, yet with a passion that revealed the man accustomed to control, now surrendering completely. Kisses turned into caresses, caresses into a surrender that set the air ablaze. The mat that had been a stage for pain and silence became a refuge for desire. Myra's breath mingled with his, fast, uneven. Every gesture, every touch was at once discovery and surrender. She surprised herself with her own courage, with how her body answered his. And Wu Jie, used to command, discovered the power of losing himself in the heat of a woman who seemed fragile, yet consumed him entirely. Hours dissolved into sighs, into endless kisses, into touches that crossed the border between care and passion. There was no more room for secrets that night, only the burning truth of two bodies that, against all reason, chose each other. When silence finally returned, the room was steeped in heat. Myra lay beside him, still breathless, her face resting against his shoulder. Wu Jie's chest rose and fell slowly, as if each breath were both relief and weight. He ran his fingers through her hair with unexpected gentleness. "You have no idea what you've done to me," he murmured. Myra closed her eyes, trying to contain the tears threatening to fall. "And you have no idea what you're doing to me." The sentence hung between them, a confession that could not be deepened. But they both knew nothing would be the same after that night. Outside, the storm finally broke. Rain hammered the roof, as if the world bore witness to the flame now burning between them. And in Myra's heart, a question throbbed. But when pleasure becomes addiction, how do you escape the thing that finally consumed you? Passion had wrapped them in flames. But could they keep the fire alive when Wu Jie's past came knocking? The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of wet earth. The village woke in silence, as if keeping secrets. Myra gathered herbs in the yard, trying to pretend the night before hadn't changed everything. But with every step, the memory of Wu Jie's body against hers seared her skin. Inside the house, he could already move more surely. His wounds were healing, his muscles regaining strength. But his mind was torn between the heat of the kisses still lingering on his lips and the darkness of a past refusing to let him go. Wu Jie rose slowly, leaning against the table. He looked at his scarred hands, the same hands that hours earlier had held Myra with tenderness, and wondered, can a man be two things at once? The mafioso who carries blood, and the lover who kneels before a woman. When she entered with the herbs, she found him standing, eyes lost on the horizon through the window. "You shouldn't push yourself so hard," she said, worried. He looked at her. His face was serious, shadowed. "I need to regain my strength," he answered. "I can't hide forever." Myra's heart turned cold. She had known the moment would come, but she wasn't ready. "You're going back, aren't you?" she asked, almost in a whisper. He didn't answer right away. He stepped closer, cupped her face in his hands. The touch was intense, yet tender. "I wanted to," he said softly. "I wanted to forget who I am when I'm with you, but they won't stop. As long as I breathe, I'll be hunted." Tears welled in Myra's eyes. "And if fighting means losing you?" Wu Jie pressed his forehead to hers, breathing deeply. "Then I'll fight even harder." Hours later, the quiet was shattered. Strange sounds invaded the village. Tires on dirt, Heavy steps, harsh voices that didn't belong to that place. Myra ran to the window, her heart racing. 2 black cars had stopped near the central square. Men in dark suits, armed, walked among the houses like predators scenting prey. "They've found you," she murmured, terrified. Wu-jae was already on his feet, his gaze transformed. The passionate lover of the night before vanished, giving way to the man of honor, the leader forged in the fire of the mafia. He grabbed a gun he had hidden among his torn clothes, the very one Myra hadn't known he kept. "I can't let them touch you," he said firmly. "This place can't pay for my past." Myra rushed to him, clutching his arm. "Don't go," she pleaded, voice breaking. "You don't have to prove anything to them. You already defeated death, Wu-jae." He looked at her, 2 worlds warring in his eyes. "Myra," he murmured, caressing her face with his free hand. "I don't fight for power. Not anymore. Now, I only fight for you." Before she could answer, a crash echoed outside. Doors kicked in, frightened shouts. The village that had always been a quiet haven was now seized by chaos. Wu-jae pulled Myra close, hiding her behind him as the door shook from blows outside. Her heart pounded so hard it seemed ready to tear through her chest. "If I fall," he said, with a fervor that made her legs tremble, "you run. Don't look back." The words hung like an impossible sentence. Myra held his face in both hands, tears streaming down. "I won't run. No matter what happens, I won't leave you alone." Time seemed to stop. Wu-jae kissed her, a quick, urgent kiss, full of the farewell he wouldn't admit. Then the door burst open. Armed men stormed in, and Myra's world filled with darkness and danger. Gunshots ripped through the night. The mafioso who had found redemption in a woman's arms now had to choose: succumb to vengeance, or protect the love that had saved him. And the question hung in the air, stifling, inevitable. Would he sacrifice her heart to save his honor? The enemies had arrived, and the village turned into a battlefield. What would Wu-jae choose? The blood that cried for revenge, or the love that made him reborn? The once quiet village was now a stage for war. Dust rose under the heavy steps of armed men. Wooden houses shook with the echo of gunfire. The invaders' rough voices slashed the air like blades, while the fear of villagers hidden behind locked doors hovered like a stifled scream. Inside the small house, Myra shrank against the wall, eyes wide, heart pounding so hard it seemed ready to tear free. Wu-jae stood before her, a living contrast, clothes still stained with old blood, body marked, but eyes burning like fire. He gripped the gun firmly. His fingers didn't tremble. His breathing was calm, controlled, as if, in that instant, he had returned to the man who once commanded armies of shadows. But now there was something different. He wasn't fighting for power, nor for revenge. He was fighting for her. The door burst inward. 3 men stormed in, weapons up, eyes cruel. Their leader smiled, a cold, mocking smile. "So this is where the great heir is hiding," he sneered, voice dripping with poison. "I thought you were already dead." Wu-jae stepped forward, shielding Myra with his body. "You should have finished the job on the road," he replied, voice deep, cutting. "Now you'll pay for every bullet, for every betrayal." The first shot cracked, tearing the silence. Wu-jae moved like a predator, swift, precise. The first intruder fell without a sound. The second tried to react, but Wu-jae hit his mark. Only the leader remained, aiming his gun directly at Myra. "Drop your weapon, or she dies," he growled. Myra's heart lurched. The cold barrel pointed at her felt like a sentence. But before she could speak, Wu-jae raised his own gun, aiming straight into the man's eyes. "If you touch her, I swear." His voice was a contained thunder. "There won't even be a name left to remember you by." The silence that followed was deadly. The enemy smiled, unbelieving, and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out. Myra squeezed her eyes shut, her body rigid. But the next sound wasn't that of her own death. When she looked, she saw Wu-jae in front of her, body slightly bent, blood spilling from a wound in his shoulder. He had stepped into the path. Hatred flooded his eyes. With his last strength, he fired at the enemy. The traitor's body fell heavy, and the room plunged back into silence. Myra ran to Wu-jae, holding his shoulders, tears streaming down her face. "No, you can't leave me now. Not after everything." He looked at her, pain throbbing. His blood-dirty hand touched her face gently. "It wasn't for honor or revenge," he murmured, voice rough. "It was for you." And then, Before her, the man once feared, the one whose hands bore the weight of battles and death, did something he had never done in his life. Wu-jae fell to his knees, not from weakness, but by choice. He knelt before her, eyes wet, breath short, as if handing over his very soul. "Myra," he said, his voice breaking, "the only loyalty I have left is to your heart." Myra's legs gave out. She knelt too, embracing him tightly, as if she could fuse them into a single body. His warm blood stained her clothes, but she didn't care. All that mattered was that he was still breathing, still there. Outside, the rain began again, drumming hard on the roof as if washing the village clean of the night's horrors. And amid the storm's roar, Myra and Wu-jae stayed together, marked by scars, yet bound by something greater than any wound, a love born of the improbable, sustained by courage, and sealed in the instant the most feared mafioso knelt not before power, but before her. And the only question that remained, echoing in the midnight hush, was this: what remains of a man when the only loyalty that matters is to the heart? And now, I want to hear from you. If you were Myra, would you have the courage to save a stranger, even knowing he could destroy your life? Or, if you were Wu-jae, would you have the strength to kneel before love after a life marked by blood and betrayal? Tell me in the comments what moved you most in this story. Was it the unlikely encounter, the blazing passion, or the moment when the most feared mafioso knelt for love? If this narrative touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapters of other intense stories, full of emotion and suspense like this one. And remember, sometimes the love that saves us comes precisely from where we least expect it.